in the timeline after this. And and I think what's interesting about this next artist, Tommy McClennan, is that both Tommy McClennan and Robert Johnson, as we I just mentioned, and Tommy McClennan, both of them have songs that really speak to the next few uh, innovations or evolutions in the timeline. Whereas Charlie Patton and Blind Willie Johnson, and Charlie Patton specifically, I mentioned Spoonful Blues, which was adapted later, but definitely a much more of a stretch, and some of their music was used a little bit more down the road, but more specifically, Charlie Patton and Blind Willie Johnson really influenced that next generation of blues players who were also Delta blues musicians, or kind of country style blues musicians, kind of staying within that more strict blues genre. Whereas Tommy McClennan and Robert Johnson really influenced, I think, rock and electric blues sounds that were probably more consistent with the urban sounds, and later, and I think it kind of speaks to where the music was headed, but also that music was evolving towards kind of trending towards this the entire time as it sort of evolved. But all these artists, when touring, they went to urban um, to cities to record. So that and there's exchange happening, as I kind of discussed early on. To a certain degree, early blues was kind of almost created in a vacuum to an extent, and then evolved into an urban sound, and subsequent genres or sounds, innovations, evolution of music all was centered in urban areas, which is consistent with the Great Migration, which we talked about, and probably I'll mention again because we're getting close to what was called the Second Migration. But anyways, for Tommy McClennan, he I just mentioned Robert Johnson's hits. Tommy McClennan was known for like Catfish Blues, Crosscut Saw, My Baby's Gone, New Highway, Number 51, and once again, I think these songs are definitely more blues oriented when you think about Crosscut Saw and what else did I just mention? Crosscut Saw, of course, well known out by Albert King. Catfish Blues, you hear it from Muddy Waters. So a lot of these songs are definitely in the electric blues area. And that makes sense because Tommy McClennan, who is definitely not hugely well known, but when you look at some of his original songs, his catalog is pretty impressive. He's really known for his vocals. Um, he originally learned also from kind of that Charlie Patton lineage. He played with Booker Miller, who was a protege of Charlie Patton. And when Booker Miller stopped playing in Mississippi, um, bas- basically, Tommy McClennan grew up mostly on a plantation in Mississippi, where he encountered Booker Miller in that same area. And Booker Miller, when he stopped playing, sold his guitar to Tommy McClennan. And shortly after, that was when Tommy McClennan started touring, and he ended up recording in Chicago. He was recruited to record in Chicago, and that's basically where his entire music career occurred, which was not very long. As I'm going to talk about in a little bit, his music career basically started in 1937 when Booker Miller sold him that guitar, and ended in 1942 when there was a strike, which you can see on the timeline during that strike between 1942 is a musician strike. I'll get into it a little bit more specifically in a moment, but not many records were recorded during that 2 year period, and so in 1942 he stopped recording, and he's impacted by that and maybe something else. There's not a whole lot of detailed history about him, but after he didn't record again, and actually he was the last time he was seen was in like a homeless community in Chicago, and shortly after that in 1961. So it was ways down the road. He passed away from bronchio pneumonia, bronchopneumonia. Um, so not a whole lot known. Career was pretty brief, but made a major impact. He's really known, like I think I said, for his really expressive, ferocious vocals. And if you get a chance to listen to his recordings, he definitely has a very unique sound to him, and was a hugely influential innovator, even though he's not super well known, uh, even even today.